Hey, Life Coast Church, Pastor Mike here on day 10 of our 21-day fast. Also, tonight is our prayer and worship night at the Family Center, so we're just excited about that, expecting great things to happen. I'm going to bring you our devotional today. I'm actually going to use yesterday's daily verse out of 1 John chapter 5, verse 14 and 15, where John says, "This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have with what we asked of Him." This is the confidence we have. Hey, speaking of confidence, years back, it might have been about 15 years ago, we had a golf cart that our kids used to use driving back in the woods and learning how to drive. And I remember one day I was working on my truck in the driveway, and I heard Dawson and Maddie, who might have been about 4 years old at the time, 5 years old at the time. They were over by the golf cart and they were talking and trying to work out a scheme of some sort. So I pressed in a little. They were trying to move the golf cart out of their way because they were doing some sort of game on the cement over there. So I snuck in a little bit closer and they said, "Hey, if you and I both get behind this golf cart, Dawson, we can push hard and I think we can move it." And Dawson, "Yeah, I think we can too." So they got behind the golf cart and I snuck up behind them, and they said, I heard them say, 1, 2, oh, nothing. They looked at each other and then they tried to get 1, 2, oh, nothing. This time they said, "One more time," and I put my hand up at the top and they said, 1, 2, and I pushed as hard as I could the top of the golf cart, and that thing went forward about 6 feet. And they just looked at each other and were so excited, so unbelievable what they just did. They went to high-five each other, and then they looked up and saw me right above them, and we all laughed. We had a great laugh together. They had so much confidence that they could move that cart, and they did, but with a little help. Hey, that reminds me of a passage in Acts chapter 12. My prayer team reminded me of this morning. Back when the church was very young, very new, and Peter and James, the brother of John, had been arrested by Herod and his officials, and the persecution was on. And matter of fact, in verse 2, it says that Herod put James to death by the sword, and he had planned to do the same thing to Peter, stuck him in prison and waiting for trial the next day. But in verse 5, it says, Peter was kept in prison, but the church, but the family of God got together, and it was earnestly praying to God for Peter. It says the church came together and were earnestly praying for Peter to God. That word in the Greek, earnestly, means to be stretched out. It's a verb to stretch your hand out in expectation that somebody's going to give you something, or to stretch your hand out to shake another hand, expecting them to put their hand out and shake yours. And now get the picture of this. The church, it could have been fearful at that time of what's going to happen to Peter, themselves got together in unison and stretched their spirits out, stretched their hands out to God, and started to pray earnestly, pray with expectation that God was going to move. God was going to answer a prayer. And you know, if you read the rest of the chapter, He did. An angel shows up, and Peter is wedged between two prisoners sleeping, and all of a sudden he's awoken, his shackles fall off, and the angel leads him right out the gate, and he's free. He's kind of still coming to, and he realizes where he's at. So he goes to the door of where the disciples are and the rest of the church, and it says he starts knocking. Says he starts knocking. When he's knocking, a girl named Rhoda comes to the door and hears his voice. She's so excited, it says she turns around without opening the door to go tell everybody else. It's like Peter's left there going, what just happened here? And she goes to the disciples. It says down in verse 15, it says, it's Peter. And you know how they answer? You're out of your mind, Rhoda. You're out of your mind. It's like, no way that could be Peter. She insists, no, it's Peter. She insists again. And finally, they said, no, it can't be Peter. It must be an angel. It must be his angel or a ghost or something like that. But Peter kept on knocking. Imagine how frustrating he was in the middle of the night. Come on, people. And they're not believing. But finally, they come to the door and they're ecstatic about how God had rescued him out of prison and answered their prayers. They had come to the Lord in full confidence and stretching themselves out, that if they pray earnestly in confidence, that God was going to move. It's kind of funny that when God moved exactly how they prayed, they didn't even believe it. Which kind of shows that maybe they're just praying, God, I don't know how you can do this. Just do something with this. Just do something amazing in front of us. And when he actually did exactly what they said, they could not even believe it. In 21 days of fasting for the last 17 years, God always seems to move in miraculous ways, just like this. And we always act surprised, like, oh man, I can't believe God did that. He says, but you approach me confidently. You approach me in unison as a family with outstretched arms and an outstretched heart, and I answered your prayer. This is how God works, and it's just like in our prayer lives, especially when we come together as the church. Hey, a lot of us are on day 10, right? I mean, some of us joined a little late, but if you're on day 10, some of you have already written in and said, man, I've experienced God in a special way. But others have said, I'm not really feeling that right now. I haven't seen God move in this special way yet. And I'm just going to encourage you, don't wane in your commitment in this fast. Keep pressing into prayer. Now is the time. The enemy wants to give you some doubt, so you don't approach the throne in confidence. So you don't stretch your hands out anymore. You just say, well, I prayed. No, John and the church is saying, stretch your hands out in full expectation, rejoicing that God is going to move. He is going to do something in your behalf, in the church's behalf, and he's going to turn all things into good according to his will and purposes for us. Hey, tonight is our prayer and worship night. It's a time for all of us to come together. We're going to have prayers going on in different rooms and for you and at the cross. Anything you want to bring to the Lord. We're going to be praying for our government, our local government, our leaders. We're going to pray for our church and our vision and our direction. Also for each of you as you've sent in some of your prayer requests. We're going to pray for some of those. We're going to worship tonight together. We're going to be like Maddie and Dawson. We're going to get down and we're going to, in full confidence, in prayer, press into life and watch God come up behind us and answer prayers. So I hope you can make it tonight. If you can't, that's okay too. Wake up in the morning, come fully confident in the throne of grace, and watch God work in your life. Stay committed, Life Coach. Great things are coming.